In a world dominated by giant flagship smartphones, have we overlooked hidden gems that could define our best smartphone experience? In this video, I'll attempt to answer that question, and we'll do some exploring of our own on what is in a flagship versus a non-flagship, and see if it's something that really makes that expense worth it. From sleek design to cutting-edge technology, Apple and Samsung have set the standard for flagship smartphones, but there's more to the story. So first, let's define smartphone, and why is it that Apple and Samsung are the ones that define the standard? So smartphones have actually been around since 1992, believe it or not. And the smartphone is considered a mobile device that does computing and things such as text, email, and even browse the internet. Now, of course, that definition has really migrated to something huge today, where we have apps that you can install and download on your device, and much, much more, with an integrated camera also entering the scene. And of course, this mobile device being touchscreen to make it much easier to manipulate. So where did the term flagship came from? It came from the Navy. Flagship was their command ship, the most powerful, the most important flagship or ship in the Navy. So when it comes to phones, it would be the one that the company determines is their go-to phone. It either has the best performance in the market, or the best performance as far as technology goes. So when you look at Samsung, for instance, their S series right now, I think it's their 23 is considered their flagship model, and their flagship foldable would be the Z Fold 5. And even the Pixel has their own flagships, and that would be their Pro models. And when it comes to iPhone, same thing. You have your Pro models in the iPhone. Those would be their flagship iPhones. Now, as far as those overshadowed companies with their smartphones, do they have flagships? I'm sure they do as far as their companies are concerned, but they are not recognized in the technology field as flagships simply because they're not as popular. A good example for that would be the Pixel and the Pixel 8. That would be a flagship phone in the Google market. And then later, it wasn't until 2001 that Nokia actually came out with a color screen smartphone where you can first access the internet with 3G technology. Now this 2001, remember, that's still 6 years prior to Apple's first iPhone release, which was not until 2007. Now, of course, back then, owning a smartphone and paying for data was two different things. It was not really worth the price you had to pay for data. Now, shortly after this, there were several other manufacturers that entered the market. Remember BlackBerry? BlackBerry came into the market in 2002 with their first smartphone with texting, and then of course BlackBerry became known for the security over the internet with their smartphones. Then of course there were other things that popped into the market and were competitive, such as, remember the Trio, the Pocket PC? Started off with a PC, and then they went to a Trio when they added internet and 3G. Those got real popular. Compaq, remember them? HP had pocket computers, remember those? For a time period, it got really competitive. And then all of a sudden, Apple hit in 2007 with the first full screen or semi-full screen smartphone. Now, of course, right behind Apple came Samsung with their i900 Omnia, which came out in 2008 to compete against the iPhone. So as you can see here, right from the beginning, the two big players, iPhone and then Samsung, and they were there from the beginning and still going strong today. Now here's something I just have to point out. As you can look here, the iPhone, over the last, most of its life, except for the last 2 years, it had a set pattern. Apps had to be a certain way. You couldn't really organize them. Where if you look here at the first Android smartphone with Samsung, you had a customizable screen, looked quite a bit different. So I digress, let's get back to it. Now, as you can see, since the beginning, these two big companies with the modern day flagships, from the beginning, were battling back and forth, stealing each other's technology or ideas. And they've even been to court a time or two, but those lead us to what we have today. Since then, there have been many other smaller major players in the smartphone market, just to name a few. Remember Nokia, HTC, you have LG, don't forget BlackBerry, Motorola, and then there's also Sony. Then there's also Xiaomi and Huawei, if I pronounce those correctly. They haven't really made a very big splash in the US today, but they are there, and they're creating technology that really challenges the big competitors today. So let's look at how they stack up. Now, if we just briefly talk about the look and feel of these overlooked smartphones, when you take one in your hand, you can just feel the quality there, and the design, the elegance, the look. It's just remarkable. Even with the foldable from Microsoft being the Surface Duo, this thing, it just looks really classy. and the quality is there, and you can feel how stable they are. You know, this thing's I've had for quite some time now, and you can feel it's just as stiff as day one. It'll hold any position. As a matter of fact, it holds more position than any other foldable out there, which is really nice. So this thing has stood up the test of time on durability. These are good quality phones, and they look really elegant when you look at them. And when you compare them to the flagship phones, such as the Z Fold 5, the quality is there with this just as much, and it's no greater than the quality of these other phones. Even when you get into components now, which would be the next category, the components in these smartphones are incredible, whether it's a flagship or one of the overshadowed smartphones, like the Pixel 8 Pro. Now, I don't want to overlook my friends out there, the more expensive foldable phones, such as the Z Fold 5 or even the Pixel Fold, and now we've got the OnePlus that's out there, and Xiaomi and Huawei, they have their competitors. They all do have the higher end smartphones, and what I mean by higher end, I mean higher price. So they're all very compatible as far as pricing. They're all in there between the $14 and $16.99 price range, which is really expensive for a smartphone. So unless you are really engaged and really into smartphones, I would say stay more with the overshadowed devices like the Surface Duo, the Surface Duo 2. They can give you that feel of a larger tablet and a smartphone when needed. Now let's talk about processing power. When you have things like the flagships or even other phones that have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip in there, or phones like the Pixel that have the 3rd Gen chip in it. This one is the top of the line for Google. Then we can't forget Apple with the proprietary M1 and M2 chips. These are very fast chips in these phones, and of course they benchmark really fast. The difference really comes to everyday use and what you get out of the phones. And what I'm finding, whether you have an Apple M1, M2 chip, the Snapdragon Gen 2, or the G3 in the Pixel phone, you get the same amount of performance. In other words, they open up apps about the same. They open up your different services on the device about the same. And they play games about the same. Of course, if you're a really high-end game player, yes, you need to go with the higher-end phones, which is the Apple or the Snapdragon. Now, basically, you have two operating systems. You have iOS, and you have, of course, the Android. And the Android is the backbone of pretty much every manufacturer out there. There are a lot of manufacturers use their own skin over Android, but the bottom line is behind the software is typically Android. So the use of the OS is pretty much the same across the board. Whether you have something made by Microsoft or something made by Google or even the flagship maker, Samsung, they all use the same OS and are going to feel very similar in your daily use. Now let's talk about cameras, because I know there's going to be a lot of you out there say, but cameras make a big difference between flagship, or I guess this is flagship, and your overshadowed phone. But that's not always the case when you take a look. For example, these foldables from across the board, they've been lacking in the camera specs. They've been putting their better cameras in their bar-shaped flagship phones and not in their foldables. So if you really are worried about cameras, then foldables not really the way to go. Although I'd say you get really good performance out of these, they're not top of the line. So if we want to talk about best cameras in phones, I would say that would go to one of the overshadowed phones, which is the Pixel series. The Pixel series have always been known to have the best photos. Go back and look at some of the reviews and comparisons on cameras on YouTube, and you'll find out that the Pixel has come on top year after year. Yes, the iPhone, because you got a lot of iPhone lovers out there, they believe that that is the best. But even if you're a Samsung lover, you may say it's the best. But when you compare pixels to pixels, pun intended, the Pixel usually comes out on top. And now I do have to say, with the Pro features that they're adding to the Pixel 8 Pro, man, that makes it hard to beat. So if we want to talk, what is the top overshadowed phone out there then? Well, I have to go to the Pixel. Whether you go with a Pixel 6 or newer, Pixel 6 Pro, Pixel 7 Pro, Pixel 8 Pro, these are top of the line. I would consider them flagship phones from Pixel, even though they're not as marketed as the other top brands from Samsung and Apple. And until of late, the Pixels have always been the most price conscientious phone out there. And you can still get a really good price out there with the Pixel 8. And I gotta tell you, if you keep your eyes open, you'll find that the price does reduce quite quickly on these phones. So if you're in the market now, since they've been out a while, especially during the holiday season, you can find some really good deals on these phones. So for the best price bang for your buck, I'd say that the Pixel is all around the best way to go, with the exception of foldable market. And I'm not trying to dig against the Pixel Fold, but right now you can get the Z Fold 4 or 5 in some cases for less money than the Pixel Fold. And you'll find out on most reviews that the Z Fold 5 still outperforms most of those foldables today. And then if you even want to save a little more money, again, I've got to mention it, the Surface Duo or the Surface Duo 2. You can save a lot of money and you get a really nice device. And if you really want to see how it compares software and performance-wise, check out this video here. So I've got to say, to wrap this up, sometimes in a world of giants, the underdog is the best choice. If you have any questions about these phones or anything that I've discussed, if you have any differences of opinion, please leave those down in the comments below, and I'd love to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure you click that subscribe button. I'd like to grow this channel even more, and I can't do it without you. So join the community by hitting that subscribe button. You can also hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss any content that I put out on Good Old Tech. Thanks for hanging with me. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.